Good afternoon and a very warm welcome to you all from us here at the College of Law. Now, for those of you who are viewing one of our PowerUp webinars for the very first time and you haven't met me before, my name's Christy Rudevelt and I'm the College Community Engagement Officer here in Queensland, and I'm delighted that you could join us today for our webinar. Now, before I go any further, I would like to take a moment to acknowledge the traditional owners of the land throughout Queensland on which we're all sitting at this time, and pay my respects to elders past, present, and emerging. Now, it's a pleasure to have you join us today for another webinar in our series that are offered exclusively and complimentary to our College of Law Queensland graduates and our alumni community. Now, as mentioned in previous sessions, each month we deliver a 1-hour live webinar on various topics, all designed to help our graduate community to set their careers in motion, to help those of you listening to chart your own destination, navigate common hurdles in practice, hone your skills, and assist you in discovering who you are in life and law. Now, today we have what I feel is probably a very timely session for you all as we head towards the end of the financial year. This session focused on performance reviews. Now, whether your firm follows a formal review process, or perhaps it's more commonplace for your firm or yourself and your manager to have ad hoc chats about your performance, but these discussions are very important no matter how they happen. They are an opportunity for you to showcase your value to the firm, to ask for feedback, to discuss your career, and to really help set you up for a meaningful and engaging and rewarding career in law. So today's session is really designed to provide you with the skills to make the most of these discussions and to provide you with the tools to recover if these discussions don't go to plan. So before I introduce you to our speaker today, Lisa Stockwell, just some very quick Zoom housekeeping from me. Now, we do ask that you take this time for yourself today, shut down your email, pop your mobile phone on silent, and remove the temptation to look at it through this time. Now, we've allocated time for questions at the end of the session, but Lisa is also very happy to answer questions throughout the presentation if these are relevant to the group and the content at the time. So, like all our other sessions, if you submit these questions via the chat function, and they can be addressed as they come through if relevant. So now I think we're all very aware of how to use this function by now. At the bottom of the Zoom toolbar, there's a bubble that a button that looks like a speech bubble. Open that, type your question in there. If you select everyone, that question will go to everyone on the webinar. If you only select host or host and panelists, that will come through to myself and Lisa, or you can just choose for that to come through to myself if you'd like those questions to be a bit more anonymous. Now, if your internet fails or you leave the session for any reason, simply just rejoin using the same details. Now, we record all of our PowerUp webinars and we'll be sharing the recording with you all early next week. So for now, enjoy, engage, take notes, and be present. This time is now for you. So let me introduce you to leading legal HR professional, Lisa Stockwell. Hi, Lisa. Lisa's joining us now. So Lisa brings a wealth of practical experience to our session today, having over 25 years of experience in the professional services environment, including 20 years at leading Queensland law firms. During her time as head of HR at 2 of these firms, she has sat in on the performance review discussions of thousands of lawyers and has played a key role in the behind the scenes processes required for promotions and pay reviews. So Lisa has a passion for neuro leadership and how that applies in the workplace, particularly in relation to performance development, coaching, leadership, and other interpersonal interactions. Importantly, she has a reputation for being approachable and empathetic while offering clear and practical advice that achieves the best outcomes for the firm and its team members. Lisa is currently the principal of Camden HR Consulting, which provides HR support to small and medium law firms, diversity and equity and inclusion strategy, and training for all organizations, and career coaching for individuals. So I think we're going to be in very good hands today. So I'm definitely looking forward to hearing from Lisa. So let me welcome Lisa on your behalf, and I'll pass over to her now. Thanks so much, Lisa. I'll stop sharing my screen and I'll pop away. Thanks, Lisa.
Thank you. That was quite an introduction. So thank you for that. All right, let me share and we'll start this presentation. Oops, sorry. Okay, welcome. The power of the performance review. It's certainly at that time of the year, as Christy said. And one of the challenges is that much as we want to know what's going on, we want to get that feedback, we also hate it, and people put it off and put it off. And the funny thing is, it's not just the person having the performance review, it's actually the person doing the review as well. And for both sides, it is actually a normal defense mechanism. We don't want to damage the relationship or hurt someone's feelings or have our own feelings hurt. And this can be a real problem if there's been a lack of communication to date, or if there is unclear performance criteria. On that point, that's a really big issue, I hate to say it, if you are female, because what researchers have found time and time again is where there is unclear performance criteria, evaluators, regardless of whether they're male or female, tend to then adjust those performance criteria to favour males over females. So really try and lock down what it is that you're being assessed on. Okay, so last month, for those of you that joined the PowerUp series, you would have had a presentation by Jennifer Bicknell and on courageous conversations, and she used a similar approach to what I'll be using today. She called it the 6 W's. We're not quite at the 6 W's, but we're pretty close. I'm not going to follow through these in order, but really we're just going to make sure that we cover all of these bases to make sure that you get the most out of the performance review to hopefully ultimately improve your job satisfaction. Okay, now preparation is the most important thing that you can be doing for your performance review. Actually try and keep as much data as you can throughout the course of the year, not just in that last little bit. You'll find in those last few weeks, you'll think to yourself, oh my goodness, what have I been doing for this year? I know I've been busy, but I really can't work out what on earth I've been doing. And you find yourself going back through your Outlook calendar and all sorts of things to try and work out what on earth you have spent your time on. So keep yourself, like a little brag folder in your emails or something like that, and just start to collect that performance information. Actually know what the performance criteria are. So if you don't know, if you haven't seen anything written down, go and ask for it. If you're in a mid-tier or a larger organisation, these things will be available on your intranet, or go and have a chat with your HR person. Don't assume that you know what it is. Don't assume that things are going well. It's always really good to get that clear written performance expectations. It's really helpful through the course of the year if you can be meeting with your supervisor at least quarterly to really discuss how you can keep developing your skills 3 months at a time. And that way you've got those opportunities to also have a bit of a discussion about how things have gone over the past 3 months as well. So by the time you get to the end of the year, there are no surprises. Be really clear when you're sharing your goals with your supervisor and get their buy-in. Don't just put it out there and not get the buy-in. Make sure that they are on board and supportive of what your goals are. So if you're turning around and saying, well, I want to be special counsel next year, and they just do that, okay, well, it's good to have ambition. That's not buy-in, and you're not going to get support for that if you're only, associate level at the moment. Really get that clear connection so both of you know what the little steps are along the way to whatever it is that goal is that you want to be doing. And of course, record all your time. I cannot say this enough. Don't undersell yourself. Don't think, oh gosh, well, I've put down $3,000 worth of time, the client won't pay that. If you've done it, it's worth it. If there's going to be a write-off, don't write yourself off first before someone else possibly does a write-off on top of that. And make sure you're recording all of your admin time specifically, not just to admin. Actually break it down. You know, are you doing marketing? Are you doing precedence? Were you spending time providing support to juniors? Actually break it down into those sort of categories. So in terms of the actual meeting itself, when is the best time? Well, again, if you're at a mid-tier or a top-tier firm, you're going to be at an organisation that is doing annual reviews for everyone at the same time. There will be a process in place, and you just need to know what that process is. So right now, just about all of those mid-tier and top-tier firms, unless they're, you know, some of the globals have got slightly different timings to fit in with what's happening globally. But for most of them right now, there will be active discussions happening by the HR team and the partners about who's ready for promotion and what those remuneration figures are going to be looking like. It might still be getting a bit shaped up, but there'll certainly be some very broad parameters already being set. If you're not part of one of those organisations, has it been a year since you joined, or is there some other sort of milestone that could make it worthwhile for a bit of a conversation to be had? So, you know, has it been a year since you were admitted, or have you just completed a probation period? Those sort of things could be reasons to say, hey, I'd like to sit down and have a formal performance discussion. Give your supervisor enough time to actually prepare for the meeting as well. Make it really clear what you want to be meeting with them about, and give them at least a week's notice that you want to be having the meeting, and of course give them any written material that you've got at that time. And when I'm talking about written material, this isn't a submission that you're making to, you know, a barrister or to court or something like that. Please don't make it as long as War and Peace. I've seen that before. It's terrible. We're talking a couple of pages at best. And make sure you allow about an hour for the discussion as well. So have a look at your calendar, have a look at your partner's calendar, and, you know, don't jam it right up next to another meeting or at a time when you know there's got to be a lot of preparation being done for a client matter. Give yourself that opportunity that you're not going to be rushed. This is, as it says, the hardest part. What's actually important to you? So this is where you've got to sit down by yourself and really think about what is the most important thing for you right now in relation to your career and your personal life. So what's important to you in the short term could be different to what's, you know, important in, say, 3 years' time. But have a bit of a thought about where you might want to be going with that. For example, I've worked with a young female lawyer who, as a first-year lawyer, had made the decision that she wanted to work in insurance law because she perceived that that was going to be compatible with the work hours in relation to having a family later on. So sometimes that's some of the decision-making processes that you make. At work, think about what are the skills that you're really trying to work on at the moment. So, you know, are they the lawyering skills, you know, how to draft or develop a legal strategy or preparing affidavits, for example? Or are you running, you know, learning how to run a matter to trial, or managing a data room? Any of those sort of skills that are really, really important. Are you wanting to develop a specialist niche in an area? Outside of the day-to-day of work, maybe you're looking at doing further study. Are you actually looking for support from your law firm to assist you with that, whether it's time or money? Is it flexible hours or flexible location that's important for you? Preparing to start a family, or, you know, maybe it is that you want to be planning to work overseas or do a client secondment. If you're comfortable, these are discussions, or certainly the overseas part, that can be a conversation that you can start planning with your supervisor for, you know, in 2 years' time or in a year's time, I'd like to go overseas. Certainly the client secondment one is one that you would need to be discussing with your firm. So when you think back a few years ago and you chose to study a law degree in the first place, A lot of people tell me that they've chosen to become a lawyer because they like helping people, or they're really good at arguing and like researching as well. So think back when you're having a bad day in the office, think about why you chose law in the first place. Remember, money isn't everything. And there can be some other things at your organisation that can really provide great value to you. And it could be those mentoring opportunities or really good learning opportunities in the firm. They might have really good hours, or you might really appreciate the flexibility that is coming your way in that space. It might be a really supportive culture, or you might just really like the type of work that you're doing. Think about all those different aspects about why this job could be the best job for you, and if there's one of those things that you'd really like to tweak to make it better. Performance reviews are inevitably tied to pay rises, and you really need to think about what is the extra value that you're bringing to the firm this year compared to last year. So what sort of BD activities have you been doing? Do you have fewer write-offs than same time last year? Are you doing more supervision of grads or clerks, for example? Are you doing more complex work, or are you just more efficient at doing it? You know, you're getting through it faster. Are clients calling you directly now, whereas last year they were calling the senior associate or the partner? You really need to remember that there is a loose link, a loose correlation between your charge out rate and your remuneration. And I hate to tell you, but certainly in those first couple of years, particularly grad and first year, that sort of level, firms are actually losing money. You cost more than the money that you make typically. Things certainly improve after that from the firm's perspective. So it goes up and then it really levels off again once you're sort of been a senior associate for a few years. That's when it really starts to level off again, because that's when you start to get more of those supervisory responsibilities and you spend more time on that non-chargeable work. You are lawyers. You're really good at advocating for your client. And in this case, your client is you. So if you feel a little bit uncomfortable about putting yourself out there and saying, I think I deserve a pay increase, think about it if it was a client. What would you be arguing on behalf of that client? And then do it. So be prepared for that discussion. Be unemotional about it. Don't threaten to go if you don't get what you want. And you need to really understand who is making that decision in the firm and when is that decision made. There's no point in getting to the 22nd of June and saying, I want a bigger pay increase, when all the budgets and everything have already been set weeks and weeks before. Now is the time for this conversation. Actually work out what the figure is that you want. Put your reasoning in writing. And please, I've seen it way too many times, don't ask for a pony if you just want a cat. So really think about what is a sensible increase that you think you can justify and deserve. A key part to a performance review is being able to ask for feedback. And I actually don't like asking for feedback because people don't like giving feedback. People feel bad about giving feedback. So ask for advice. People love to give advice. Have you ever noticed that? People love to share their advice on things. So, you know, some really easy ways that you can say that, you know, do you have any ideas on how I can improve my drafting or that meeting with the barrister? I really want to learn how to do this better. Can I ask your advice on how you would have tackled this differently? Whenever you get a document back with the red pen through it, keep it, keep a copy of that. It's really good to be able to flick back through and almost have your own little personal portfolio of hints and suggestions on how you can word things better. Give your supervisor permission to give advice. And the GBH is not grievous bodily harm. It's good, better, and how. So what did you do good? How could you do it? Sorry, what did you do good? What could be better? and how would you do it differently next time? So it's something that's actually from sports psychologists. It's something that they do with sports teams, whether that team has won or lost. So with everything that you're doing, what did you do good? And I know that's terrible grammar, but we are talking sports teams here. What did you do good? What could you do better? And how could you do it differently next time? And regular communication is absolutely the key with doing well in your job. The number of performance reviews where, you know, that the young lawyer has come in or the graduates come in and said, well, I haven't had any feedback, and I guess no feedback is good feedback. No feedback means that they haven't had the guts to be able to turn around and say things aren't going so well. Okay. It's really important to try and find some information to help yourself when you're preparing for this. So as I said earlier, the firm's intranet or the HR team will be able to provide you with some promotion criteria. If not, ask a friend who happens to work at an organisation that does have these things and see how much of it might be applicable to your organisation. Salary surveys. Look, there's lots out there. Hayes do it, QLS does it. Looking on Seek ads, for example, are all ways of finding information on remuneration. Talking to recruitment agents also. But please remember, you'll rarely be comparing apples with apples when you're talking salaries or promotion points with others. So salaries are going to vary differently. Firstly, the big one is going to be, is it inclusive of super or exclusive of super? It's obviously there's like a 10% difference there, which is pretty huge. But also, if you're comparing yourself to someone who might have an expectation of 7 billable hours a day and your billables are 4.5 or 5, well, you can expect that the amount they're going to be paid is going to be very different. They might also have a different bonus structure to what's available to you as well. So just think about those sort of things. Some organisations have automatic promotion points, particularly to that associate level. And for others, they have to actually hit certain promotion criteria before that will happen for them. Find out why people do the area of law that they do. What is it that has kept them there? Why do they enjoy it? It might be that if you're not really 100% happy in the area that you're in at the moment, that leaving law isn't the best solution. It's actually moving slightly sideways into a different area. And obviously, you can also have a chat with a career coach to discuss options as well. There will be times when things don't go to plan. And I think you can go into a performance review meeting and it might feel like it's gone really well, but you leave that meeting thinking, oh, all a bit flat and deflated after that, because the partner's just basically patted you on the head and said, just keep doing what you're doing. You're doing a great job. Just keep doing what you're doing. What do you do with that? It doesn't help you at all. If you're going to keep doing what you're doing, you're not actually going to get any better. I think that's the definition of insanity, isn't it? To keep doing the same thing and expect a different result. So really try and drill down on specifically, what do I need to do differently or better to be able to be a better lawyer this time next year? Or I'm really keen to be promoted to senior associate in 2 years' time. Can you help me put together a plan on what milestones I need to be hitting in order to make that happen? Sometimes you've come to the conclusion that this is not the area of law that you want to be working in. You know, you've done 2 rotations and maybe you didn't get the one that you wanted, or maybe neither of those are particularly the area that you thought you wanted to work in, or maybe it's just not even offered at your firm. Really, that's where you really need to sit down and try and work out, what is it about this that you're not enjoying? And are there aspects of the work that you're doing that you are enjoying? So then you can get a bit of a better idea as to where might be a different area that could work for you. And again, if I refer back to the previous slide, talking to lots of other lawyers about the work that they do and why they enjoy it is a really, really helpful thing to do. It also gives you a sense as to which areas are growth areas, which areas are becoming commoditized, and just some really useful information like that. You want to be in an area that is going to continue to grow and continue to be interesting for you. So an area where it's not busy or it's becoming highly commoditized could be things that you think, that's not really going to be for me. There will be some of you on the call who will think, I actually just don't want to be a lawyer anymore. And sadly, when you talk to the law societies around Australia, that happens to way too many lawyers at about the 5-year PQE mark. So you really need to think about, why do you think this is the case? Is it just the people that you're working with, or a particular client that you're working with? Or is it the type of work that you're doing? It could be that you just need a small tweak and things will actually improve significantly. Or it could be that you're ready to move into a different area. And sometimes that can take a fair amount of planning to make a successful transition out of being a private practice lawyer and into something else. Quite commonly, you don't get the pay review or the promotion that you were seeking. Now, if I go back to the very start of my presentation where I talked about preparation, probably the most important thing there is to be really clear with your supervisor about what your expectations are and getting their buy-in. So you need to make it pretty clear as early as you can about any promotional aspirations that you might have, what sort of time frame that might look like. And certainly around this time of year, be talking about what sort of remuneration expectations you have as well. If you're given negative feedback, look, at some point in time, we all get negative feedback. It's best to get that at the time that something happens. There is nothing worse than, 3 or 4 months later, you go into your performance review discussion and your supervisor goes, well, look, we really think you could have done X better. Or I really think overall, the way that you talk with clients isn't as good as it could be, or you need to do better time recording, whatever their feedback is. There's a couple of ways to address that. And the most important thing, I think, to think of is to be curious. Why are they actually giving you that feedback in the first place? As I said earlier, performance discussions are often as uncomfortable for your supervisor as it can be for you, because we don't want, it's that self-defense mechanism where we're trying to protect ourselves and not hurt the other person or the relationship that we have with that person. So really take it from that position of curiosity as to why they're giving that feedback. Ask for some examples. Ask for how they think you could be doing it better, and give them that permission to give you that regular advice on how you can do better on the way through. So, it might be as simple as, next time you see me doing X, Y, Z, can you just let me know that I'm doing it if I haven't been aware of, a particular behavior or something like that. Give them that permission to give you feedback on the way. Okay. Now, one of the things, as Christy said at the start, one of the things I do is career coaching. So if you do want to have a discussion about getting your current lawyer role to the next level, or you're looking at actually moving to a different firm perhaps, or leaving the profession completely, that's certainly something that I can work with you if that's something that you want to be doing. And we're open for questions. So thank you.
I might pop back up on the screen. I'm coming up slowly here. Hello. Thank you very much, Lisa. Now, do we have any
All right.
questions? Because look, obviously as well, Lisa's a career coach. So, and if you're sending a question, if you wanted to send a question through the chat to me anonymously, we can get some of her ideas or her expertise on some things that you might be plagued with at the moment. I've got a couple of questions here while people might be thinking of questions to ask Lisa. In relation to, I know, as you mentioned, there is a common point in lawyers' careers where they might just think this isn't the job for me. So they've had a number of performance review discussions. They're feeling like things aren't improving. They've really come to the point that they're dissatisfied with their career or in their current role. From a career coach's point of view, how should they approach sort of that roadblock, I guess, in their career?
Yeah, that's a really good question. And the start of it is really trying to work out in yourself, is it me or is it the organisation? And if it is the organisation, then let's cross that part off and establish that that's not where the rest of your career is going to be headed for this part. The next step is working out what type of work do I actually want to be doing? And it might be that you actually love being a lawyer. You just don't love being a lawyer for 70 hours a week. Or you love being a lawyer, but you really want to be doing it for not-for-profits, or, it's a different client. And sometimes we're so overwhelmed by the feeling that we have about this is just too hard and it's just burning me out, that it's quite difficult to separate it into those different strands of what is good and what is the stuff that I need to change. So doing things like a strengths assessment can be helpful. Actually talking it through, even starting with the HR team in terms of, sorry, I'm reading a question at the same time.
Yeah.
And that just
well, good. Thank you for your questions. Keep sending them through. And
thank you, Patrick, for that small distraction.
And don't look at them, Lisa. I'll present. I'll present them for you in a moment. To them in a moment.
So having a chat with the HR team about what are the career paths available in this organisation, and for a number of law firms, the expected career path is that you're going to be a graduate and a solicitor, an associate, senior associate, special counsel, and a partner. But not everyone actually wants that path. So being really clear about what is actually available to you within your organisation can also be really, really beneficial.
And I know so many lawyers who have pivoted.
Sorry,
let's
I need to let the dog out.
No, do that. While Lisa does that, I know so many lawyers, as those on the call probably do, who have pivoted. And look, I'm one of them, but there's so many, and it's about having those conversations. Those of you who saw one of our previous power ups in December with Stacey back on can't remember the title off the top of my head, but on really looking at where you want your career to go and that career planning advice. And she did some very practical, there was a lot of worksheets involved and some practical activities where you sit down and look at your motivations and your strengths, etc., and can really help guide you where you might want to go next with your career. Now, we do have a couple of questions coming through. So I know we've got a couple, one here that says, do you have any advice for lawyers working within a team budget when seeking a salary increase?
A team budget. Probably most law firms actually do work in team budgets, to certainly at some level. It's just how far down that actually goes. So certainly your mid-tier and your top-tier firms will have an overall budget for every work group or every sector, and then how that pie then gets divided up and allocated to each individual varies depending on the firm. For some organisations, They make it very clear that, you know, for this group of 5 people or 10 people, it doesn't really matter how you split it up. It's the budget that you're hitting overall. In that sort of situation, it's going to, I think, not be too dissimilar. It is going to be that combination of what financial contributions have you made, but also really recognizing that there's a lot of other contributions that are essential for the team to be functioning well. Particularly, this is actually, again, particularly an issue for women, because it's often the women in our teams who are the ones who do the more of the mentoring of the juniors. They're the ones who might, you know, the juniors might come and see them with the, you know,
emotional problems,
career advice, emotional sort of issues and those sort of things. You can't really allocate that to a file, but it's really important that those sort of things happen for the good functioning of the team. There's actually some really interesting research that's come out from Gallup. It's not recent research, but it's based on, I think, 29 million people. It's really, really big research that shows that female managers typically have more engaged employees working for them than male managers do, in part because they're doing those sort of things and they check in more often with their team members. So if you find yourself doing those sort of roles, or you're doing the precedent development or the BD stuff, or, you know, you're just being the glue that's holding the team together, they are all things that you need to actually acknowledge are equally as important to doing the client-facing paid work, because the client-facing paid work really isn't going to happen nearly as well or as efficiently if all of those other things behind the scenes aren't happening.
Thank you. I think we answered that one. We've got a few questions coming through here. Another one around salary.
Yep.
Do you recommend sending salary guides, seek ads, etc., to your supervisor prior to the review and the figure you are seeking? Or is it better to raise these points during the review and send them your KPI, client wins, etc., I guess making the case first, and then discussing the figure face-to-face, particularly if you're seeking a large increase?
That's a good question. I think it will depend on the relationship that you have with your supervisor and the size of the firm that you're working at. So I would suggest, if you're working for a small firm, I would put all of that information together up front. So here is all the awesome stuff I've done this year, and this is why I think I'm worth X dollars, and give them, you know, a bit of time to actually ruminate on that and think about it. If I was in a larger organization, I would tend to have the performance discussion first, get a bit of a feel for what the, you know, if the feedback might be a little bit different to what I was expecting perhaps or not, and either in that meeting say, that's great, I am hoping for a performance review, a pay review, and they might ask you then and there, you know, have you got any thoughts of what that might be? Because that is quite common. And if not, say, you know, I've put together some thoughts and I can send that through to you. I think if they've got a written copy of it, it does help, and it certainly gets rid of any of that ambiguity around superannuation, for example.
Okay. The person who asked the previous question said, thank you very much. That was very helpful. So thanks, Lisa.
Good.
Around the team budget and seeking salary increase. Another question here there, and keep the questions coming, guys, because we've got some time. It's wonderful here to be able to chat with Lisa. So there are only 2 people in my ILP, myself and the LP director. My mentor and supervisor loves everything I do, and I rarely get negative feedback. How do I approach him to be more critical? Great question. Difficult in a 2-person organisation.
It is difficult. If you're doing any work for barristers, for example, you can certainly, that's an easier option than, say, asking a client. A client's always a little bit, I wouldn't really go there. But certainly, I think you've got to give them that opportunity, the invitation. You know, it's one step away from a written invitation. Please, you know, I'm not going to get better if you keep telling me that what I'm doing is great. I want to, how do I get to that next level? What do I need to do to stretch myself to really be able to perform at the next level? So you might be performing really, really well for the level that you are. Give them that permission, really be very explicit about telling me and challenging me to make it to that next level. What do I need to be doing?
Okay, any other questions? Anyone wants to pop through? Something that I think I have mentioned actually in one of these PowerUp webinars previously is the smile file. And that's something I think someone told me about at some stage. And essentially, as you're receiving positive feedback in an email, or it might be on the phone and you might quickly scribe it down in an email, positive feedback from clients, from barristers, from colleagues in other teams that you might have done a little bit of something for, colleagues at other firms that you've worked across a matter with. Either ask for feedback, or there's certain ways that at the end of dealing with someone you can give them feedback, and then that prompts them to say, oh, actually, I really enjoyed working with you as well, and that was really great what you did, and whatever. And keep those things, because exactly what I think Lisa said earlier, and we all do it, you see a performance review coming up in your diary, and you're like, oh, scrambling, thinking, it was a whole year. What have I done? And what evidence can I pull together here that is proof of what I have done and how valuable I am in this role? So have a think about that as well.
What is the evidence? How do you prove your case?
Anything else? Any other questions? Talking about salaries, because I know, that's what we all end up having front of mind a lot of the time. Where do firms get, like you mentioned, where we can get, or where lawyers can get salary information from? Where do the firms tend to find out current sort of market rates, Lisa?
Yeah, that is a good question. There are a few paid services available for law firms. There is, the smaller one is run by the ALPMA. So that's, if you work for a small or a regional law firm, that's most likely where your practice manager or partner is going to get their data from. And it really does break it down according to, in this instance, Queensland regional firms, how many, and bases it on their firm size based on the number of partners in the firm, and does look at different practice areas as well to some extent, and also has some information in there on support staff roles also. The large firms, so all of the top tier firms and some of the mid-tier firms, will participate in a large, it's large, it's anonymous, it's a paid survey with lots of analysis done that really allows them to get some really good breakdowns as to what different roles are worth. So, they do have, your HR team will have a really good idea as to what someone in your practice group with your many years of experience, with your sort of budget expectations, what they are getting paid in other firms, both in Brisbane or in Sydney, or whether that's a mid-tier firm or a top-tier firm. So that's not data that you will be able to get. And of course, different firms then have different remuneration strategies as well. So do they want to be known in the market as, a top payer with a really, really good remuneration position and, an overall really good package? Or are they being perceived more as we've got lower chargeable expectations, we've got great lifestyle balance, and the pay point might be a little bit lower, or the pay point's a little bit lower on your fixed remuneration, but we've got an awesome bonus scheme. So different firms, again, as I was saying earlier, you really can't compare apples with apples. because it is going to look at a whole range of different factors there in terms of what the bonus scheme might look like, what the firm's remuneration strategy is, and what the other benefits are that they're looking at offering as well.
Thanks, Lisa. And I think on that, there's a question here sort of around that point. Is there a set metric or ratio for COR and salary typically, i.e. 4 times salary for budget and then adjust COR accordingly? If so, does it change on post-admission experience?
Yes, four is often bandied around as the magic number. And as I said earlier, if you were, a graduate or a first year, you'd be paying the firm, particularly in the larger organisations where they really do invest an enormous amount of partner time, senior associate time. When you look at all of the induction training and ongoing training throughout the course of the year, we really don't expect our graduates or even our first years to be making money for the firm. Quite honestly, it's a long-term investment. We really want to see these people grow and develop into great senior practitioners, and that's really where lawyers start to make money for their organisation. So four is not the magic number, and it also depends on the team that you're in as well. So I'm going to pick on the poor property people. If you're doing, if you're in a conveyancing area or doing the highly commoditized type of property work, at the moment, that's just a race to the bottom with how the clients actually want to pay you. And that's really, really hard if you've just been promoted, say from associate to senior associate, but the type of work you're doing hasn't changed, but your charge out rate's just gone up. All that really happens then is that your write-offs just increase. So it becomes really, really hard to justify that pay increase or a charge out rate increase whenever the actual money that the client's prepared to pay isn't changing as well. So yeah, I wouldn't be going with the 4 times rule. I hate to tell you that, but it really, very, very loose, if anything.
Okay, well, last chance for questions for Lisa. But before I sort of throw to Lisa to give us her sort of top tips or top takeaways from the presentation today, something that I wanted to mention, I guess, is also don't be discouraged around this time of year or, after the end of the financial year when friends, or you might see all over LinkedIn, promotions, etc., etc. That's when it really is really important to come back to what does success look like for you? Success for you, and you mentioned it at the start, Lisa, as well. What is it? What do you actually want to be doing with your career, your life, your work-life balance, family? There's all these other parts. And what does success look like for you? So is the firm supporting that at the moment? Are there education opportunities, mentoring? Like there's lots of other things that it doesn't all it isn't all your job title on LinkedIn. And it is often difficult when you may see that everyone else is being promoted, but it might be that at the moment, this is where you need to be until you're waiting to jump into a secondment role or 2 years down the track wanting to move into something completely different. And this suits your life stage at the moment. So I think there's a lot of things like that to consider as well. So just always make sure you're bringing that back. That might be written on a piece of paper somewhere and stuck on your computer or at home on the fridge, what the end goal is. Any other questions? No? I will just share my screen here as we finish up. I don't think I had any other questions either.
No, I think, the most important thing for everyone to remember is that preparation is just so important. And this is your career. Don't be passive in your career. Really take control of where you want it to go. The person who's got your best interests at heart is you, not your supervisor or anyone else for that matter. So really think about what's important for you and what you want to be doing.
Of course. And your 5, sorry, I really almost skipped over it. Your 5 top takeaways from this presentation, Lisa. There's so many.
Yeah. Look, be curious when they are giving you feedback. Be curious about why you're getting the feedback that you're getting and how you can actually use that. I've certainly been in performance discussions where the feedback has been negative, but it's a bit oblique, and it's really hard to actually know what they're trying to tell you, other than it's not positive, but you don't really know what you're meant to be changing. Ask again. I'm sorry, I really don't understand what you're trying to tell me with that. Can you give me an example? Can you show me how I'd be doing it differently next time?
Or where do you see me? I think as well, like pass the question back on to them, because they might be thinking that, or might envisaging you being sort of like a mini them and wanting to do X, Y, Z, and just assuming that. So make sure you're both on the same page.
And as we talked about earlier, the assumption that you're going to go from graduate to lawyer to senior associate and whatever, if that's not what your plan is, you need to have that conversation. Don't assume. Don't let them assume. We all know what happens when you assume, and it's not good. It's really not good. Other points, and I think this was a really good point that you made in closing, Christy, was a good job is more than just about the money or the title. Really look at what those other things are that are important to you, but also don't let yourself be walked over in relation to the remuneration as well. Don't let them take advantage of you just because you're not the squeaky wheel.
Thank you.
I think that'd be about it.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Lisa. I will close. If there are any questions, just pop them through the chat and we can answer them. But look, obviously, Lisa, a very, very big thank you from both me and those in attendance today and those who will be viewing the video after the event. So thanks for sharing your time in preparing and being with us here today, your experience and your insight from all those many years in working in some of our great Queensland firms, or great firms here in Queensland. So as a thank you, as we do for all our speakers in the series, College of Law will be making a donation on your behalf to Women's Legal Service Queensland to support access to free legal assistance to women in our state. So thanks very much.
Wonderful.
Now, I of course would like to thank you all for taking your time out of your day or your early evenings to attend this webinar, and obviously for those of you who have watched the recording. We hope that you found this valuable and our series valuable. Now, as I always say, just try and get this up. As I always say, as we develop our further sessions for our PowerUp series, we really do want to ensure that we're responding to your needs and designing our sessions accordingly. We really can't do that without your feedback. So everyone loves a survey, but look, we do have a very short survey. I've dropped it into the chat now. So if you did want to, I'll send this in a post-event email as well, but if you did want to copy and paste that into your browser so that when we close the webinar, you can quickly complete that now, then that will save you worrying about it later. But really, it's in the survey, you'll obviously have the opportunity to tell us whether you liked today and some feedback for Lisa and myself, but also what you want to see in future sessions, and we'll try and make that happen. So what's next? Now, we're very excited to announce that our popular In My Court series is back. So over the next 3 months, our PowerUp webinars will present our In My Court series, and that provides you with a really great and sometimes unique opportunity to hear directly from members of the bench on best practice in their jurisdictions. So the focus of these sessions is to build your awareness of practice and procedure in these jurisdictions, to hear from their honours directly on the court's expectation of practitioners in that jurisdiction. Their honours will discuss common mistakes and share tips of how you can be successful. And also you can seek guidance directly from the bench by having the opportunity to ask questions ahead of time or on the day anonymously if you'd prefer. So those upcoming sessions are on the screen now. I will also email out the dates for those. They will be up for registration shortly, so watch out in your email boxes for the registration links for those to come through. Once again, these are offered exclusively and completely free to our College of Law Queensland alumni and our prospective PLT students for those ones. So lastly, connect with us. As I always say, we want to see what fantastic things all of our graduates, so our alumni, are up to, and we want to make sure that you're aware of upcoming events and programs here at the college and general helpful articles and posts the college push out nationally and share with the profession. As well, I've got Lisa's details up there. Now, as we've heard, Lisa's got extensive experience in legal HR realm and also in this careers coaching space. So we've had a couple of sort of presenters with career coaching experience, and it's just so valuable. So think about reaching out to Lisa. If you are working in firms and looking at that career coaching, or it might even be for a sort of HR strategy and things like that. She'll be able to help you out. So look, that's it from me. Unless there's any further questions, I can't see any further. Oh, can I? No, I can't see any further coming through. So if you can pop into the survey when we close, let us know what you'd like to see from us, and enjoy the rest of the week. Next week will be a hard one without all of our public holidays that we've been getting so used to. But as I always say, stay well and happy in law and life, and we hope to catch up with you at a future event.